Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark, and today we're going to crunch some numbers about Georgia, the country, of course. More specifically about apartment sales. Is it better to buy an apartment in winter during low season, or is it better to get it done in summer during high season? So I have prepared a little research for you, which I'm going to share with you. And in the second part of my video, I'm going to compare buying an apartment in Georgia versus investing in American stock market, just for a fair comparison, because my findings are rather interesting, and this is the reason why I myself not buy an apartment. However, my case is not your case. I do think a lot of people should buy an apartment, but maybe that's just not for everyone, and that is the premise of this video for today. But let's start with numbers, okay? Weirdly, the coldest months in terms of sales in Georgia, that's going to be March. Okay, well, that's understandable. It's the end of low season. But then June and August. Now, this is strange because June, July, August, those are generally the highest possible season for the country. There's a lot of people coming in, and you would think that other people would be also buying apartments. That's generally the truth for most cases, but not in Georgia. Most of the lowest numbers. And well, on the other way of the aisle is December, October, and November. Basically, the beginning of low season. Those are the peak sales for the apartments, both Batumi and Tbilisi. I don't want to bore you with specific numbers, but for the previous year was about 2.93 thousand during the colder months, June, March, August, and closer to 4,000 apartments total sales per month during October, November, and December. Now, those are fundamentally different periods to buy apartments because obviously highest is December. It's close to 4,000, quite a bit of a difference, mostly because they have KPIs, of course. Most companies need to sell more by the end of the year. They have plans, so to speak, to fulfill, and it's the best time to get deals. But if you look at the average sales price, it is higher in December. However, you can get free parking spot, you can get free renovation for your apartment, you can get more perks with your apartment, but not specifically that discount. During high season for tourism, but low season for sales, you can definitely negotiate better in terms of pricing for the apartments. They're not gonna give you too many presents like a parking spot, for example, but you can negotiate on the price because the volume is lower, and they'll be willing to do that, just so you know. That is what it is. Also, speaking of Georgia, it's a relatively safe environment for investing your money, but you need to be aware of particular developers, unfair developers, which are notorious for delaying construction, for, I don't want to say lying to customers, because well, that really depends on the contract, right? The language they use. So I don't want to say anyone's lying to anyone, but on my channel a few months ago, I took an interview with a good friend of mine. He's also a realtor in Georgia. And I asked him a question, tell me the bad developers and the good developers, so we know exactly where not to go. And he said he can't tell me that. No one will ever tell me that because, well, first, it's against the ethics of realtors, and second, because I don't want to say there's violence there, but I do want to say that certain developers are not afraid to use certain pressure against real estate agents and also, well, people if they see something wrong about them. Again, it's not as bad as it sounds, but just so you know, well, you got to be careful here. Generally, worse developers give you too sweet of a deal. They will promise you, they will guarantee a certain rate of return on your investment. They will give you the free renovation, free parking spot. Basically, if the deal seems too good to be true, it is. Don't go there. Look for the balance and don't go for the cheapest possible square meter. Buy from a reputable developer and you'll be good. Don't try to cheap out. Prices in Georgia are generally much lower than in European countries and in Israel. A lot of people come from Israel to buy real estate in Georgia. So don't try to save money here. You'll just lose more. And maybe you remember the story of a good friend of mine. He owns 2 apartments in Batumi, Georgia. One of the apartments is good. It's done. It's being rented out right now. But the second one is stuck. It was supposed to be finished later this year, and he has 13th floor, but they built on the 3 and they got stuck. He's suing right now the developer, and it's a never-ending process. and you don't want to sue anyone in Georgia. It's not a fast process, and it costs something too. And there's a million ways to delay anything, any sort of payments, even if you win in the court. Basically, my point is, don't do that. Think first, act second. That's my advice to you regarding buying apartments in Georgia. Okay, so also, should you actually buy something? Because if you're looking to relocate, a lot of people right away think of buying an apartment in Georgia. And yes, you can. You have the right for ownership, the 1% tax if you're working online. It's all good things. But the situation is fluid, it's changing. And do you completely trust the country? I personally do. I don't think Georgia is set up for success. But my point is, I'm not buying anything because if you look at the rental prices, for example, I'm going to pay about $700. I'm right now in Thailand, as you can see. Well, you probably cannot see, but I am in Phuket, Thailand. I spend half of the year in Thailand and half of the year in Georgia. But between these two, I definitely, if I was buying something, I would definitely buy it in Georgia and not Thailand. If you want to know why, it's probably a longer answer, so I don't want to spend too much time here, but Georgia is much, much better. But the apartment, which cost about $100,000, I am renting for second year already for approximately $700 per month. And if you compare the cost and the rent, well, and keep in mind also you need to pay taxes for your apartments, which are very, very low. Basically, I shouldn't have said that out loud even. They're very low. Upkeep costs something, but also not gonna break your bank. My main point is, if you have $100,000, maybe it's more beneficial to rent an apartment for $700 and then put that $100,000 to stock market. I don't want to advertise you anything in specifics, but that's what I do myself. I invest in the American stock market and I rent because, well, that provides a higher rate of return to me. And that's what I wanted to compare today. Again, I will not tell you the exact ETFs and stocks that I own because I don't want to give you some advice, bad or good. If you want to talk to me more specifically about it, you can click links in the description. I offer the service professionally, but today, not about that. Today is about numbers, and check this out. Let me pull out my spreadsheet, which I've created. That's based on my personal investments over the course of the last 10 years. Now, I'm not doing it for 10 years, I'm doing it for 5 years, but the first 5 years is historical data, and the second 5 years, so in 2025, is my personal real data. And I want to imagine a situation in which you are renting an apartment for $700 a month, which is typical for Georgia. It's a good price. You can go lower, you can go above that, of course, but it's a good amount. And we will assume 6% increase to that rental cost per year, which is also reasonable to assume. It's all based on real numbers from Georgian statistics. 100,000 we will invest, but then we will compare the income which you could have had buying apartment outright and not investing and not paying rent in this case. So from the gains of the stock market, I will subtract the rental costs. So if there is a gain, that's already subtracted gain. Let's go. First 3 years, it's very similar. Of course, you can win or lose in any of the situations because first 3 years, according to my data, of course, can be volatile and unpredictable. But starting with the third, fourth, fifth year, you have a clear difference. I mainly spread out my portfolio in the stock market between 3 ETFs. One is broad market. Second one is more conservative. Companies like Chevron, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, and so on. Not only, of course. And the third is more tech-focused. So 33% approximately of my portfolio is tech-focused. Now, this ETF is definitely growing much, much faster, much harder than, obviously, than apartments in between. That's non-negotiable, of course. Anyway, starting with year 4, in our hypothetical scenario, you would have about $112,000. Here we count the cost of appreciation of your apartment in Georgia. It's growing in price, but again, you put all the money in the apartment, so you're not investing. Actually, there could be a hybrid, right? You could still keep investing on the background, but let's imagine you're not doing that right now because, again, you put $100,000 of your hard-earned money into the apartment. So at year 4, the cost about $112,000. That's a reasonable growth to assume. Now, with our investments, the gain that's already subtracted the rent, which we are paying per month for the apartment because we're renting here, right, is $120,000. So very slight, but there's a gain. Actually, I'm lying to you right now. The average in my portfolio is $163,000. So that's about $50,000 over the apartment and no investing. And I will say it again, rent is excluded already from that gain. So that's the money you get on your hands. That's based on the historical data. In my portfolio, we can't guarantee anything for tomorrow. Who knows what's going to be tomorrow? I don't. But we still need to make decisions. And it's better to make decisions based on something, or for example, historical data. But again, it's not proving anything. But again, okay, don't listen to me. You understand my point, right? Moving on. A year 5, 6, 7, we see almost double of a difference. So my portfolio, and that's I'm talking about the last 5 years already. So the apartment, let's say, goes for about $120,000, $130,000. That's at year 6 or 7. It could be a bit faster, of course. Some years in Georgia were faster. Let's say 2022, 2024. These 2 years was explosive growth because of the Russian, Ukrainian, and Belarusian people relocating to Georgia in huge numbers. Right now, it's more even. Because Georgia is working hard to attract more people from different countries like Iran, like Israel. Well, there's enough people with money who want diversification of their portfolios, and also a specific category of people who can't afford Dubai, because Dubai, $700,000 would be probably the lower amount you will need to buy something decent. It's a very different world, of course, here, but comparable. Okay, so our investments in the ETFs portfolio, and ETF is basically, it's very simple, right? It's just one thing you choose and you pay. In my specific case, 100 becomes about $267,000 during the time when apartment is 120, 130. We can see very, very clear growth. And I'll say it again, the rent is subtracted. So I don't want to continue this conversation. Basically, you get the idea. You can definitely make way more money in still somewhat conservative, optimistic portfolios into the American stock market and keep renting an apartment. But that's the reason I'm not buying an apartment just yet. But I'm not against it. I used to have 2 different apartments in 2 different countries. And one was a good investment. I made money on it after 2 years and I sold it. The other one was stuck. I had to fight a lot, and actually I sold it under the market. I lost. I had negative profit on that apartment. So I learned a lot. Based on that, especially with apartments, it's a procedure. If you buy an apartment, you need to pay a commission to the realtor. You will need to pay commission to someone for sure. Even if you don't see it, there has to be someone making money on you. If you sell the apartment, it's also very likely you're not going to do it all by yourself. You have to share the profits with some realtor. So that we also need to keep in mind. Liquidity of the apartment is not so high. However, Georgia is still a very simple country to do those things. It's easier to buy and sell in Georgia than in Germany, let's say. They don't need any permissions, background checks, and so on. It's much simpler than that. But a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, he lives the American dream. He's my age, about 30 years old. He has 2 children, about to have a 3rd child. He just recently managed to pull all the money he could, sold the apartment he had, and bought his first house. And he cannot be happier. He lives by the lake, not the lake, a river. And he has a garage, his own territory. For him, it does not matter that he could have made more money somewhere else. He owns a house right now. That's what matters to him. And a lot of people think the same way. You want your walls. You don't want anyone to allow you or not allow you to paint the walls, to change the decor of your house. If you want to be an owner, you want to be an owner. It's just what it is. And the potential gain you could have is worth to you not getting. I'm sorry for my poor English, and my brain is fried right now. You get my point, right? So that lost gain is worth because you own your house and you live by your own rules. So you need to ask yourself this question: what is more important to you, the so-called freedom to move in space but earn potentially a bit more money? However, you're going to spend this money too, because you are moving in space all the time and you have to keep this cost also in mind. Anyway, this video is not about that, but that's just this interesting idea that I have had. Well, speaking of Georgia, I'll give you two bonus stories. There's one example, a client of mine who I was helping him with setting up the American stock market account, and he's originally from Russia. He moved to Georgia in 2022. He had about $100,000 on him at that time. He bought two apartments in Batumi View. That's a really nice complex in Batumi, Georgia. He managed to almost triple the money after 2 years because the funny thing, he did not know there's going to be a war. He didn't know anything about that. He was just lucky in that sense that something happened and a lot of people came to Georgia, and obviously that reflected in the prices for the apartments and was a very good gain for him. He sold all of it at about $500,000 and now he is in Australia. So yes, he took all his money, managed to secure some, I'm not sure which one, but it's a relocation visa to Australia, and he brought his family there because for him it's a safer, more future-proof place to live. Well, he made a whole bunch of money. Some people, like a second bonus story for you, is a person who lost money. That friend of mine is Ukrainian. He's from the eastern Ukraine. He also had an apartment and a car, and he also sold it, but he sold it right after the war started. And because the timing was wrong, he lost a lot of money on the apartment, he lost a lot of money on the car, because obviously the market was really down. And also there was a possibility of the apartment being destroyed or a car, because, well, I mean, it's a war. And he managed to also escape of the country. He's in Georgia now, and so he needed to pay the guys to help him escape the country because, again, was it 4 years straight already? Third year? In Ukraine, men cannot leave the country. And for these guys, it's not the question of making money or nothing like that. It's basically whatever money you have, you try to save your life and get out of the country. That's the problem for them. That's another story. But okay, so guys, you got my point. I hope you understood the message I was trying to tell you today. If you have any questions about what I just said about the apartments or when to buy an apartment, if you need advice for good realtors in Georgia, I can definitely give you the contacts. Just write a comment or maybe text me on Instagram so I can connect you directly if you want. Thank you for watching, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Bye-bye.